Scanning. Identity authorized. Welcome to the Secret Superhero Club Podcast Network.
This week on the ASP, I sit down with character and prop designer Chris Battle. Basically, he did pretty much everything from your childhood, so give it a listen. Welcome everybody to the Animation Station podcast. My name is Josh, and joining me today, I have animation character designer Chris Battle. How's it going, Chris?
Hey Josh, how you doing?
Pretty good. So first off, just for our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an animation character designer, specifically working in television, and I've been working on a lot of shows that your audience might be familiar with, most notably Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack. Most recently, I've been on the past 5 seasons of Teen Titans Go. Most of that is all Cartoon Network, but I've worked for a lot of other studios as well, Disney, Nickelodeon, all of them.
So now, you've basically helped design characters for a lot of people's childhoods.
I know, it's kind of cool.
Is that something that you, like, when you meet people and they find out that you've worked on this show, like, is it like a gushing experience? Do you feel really honored to have, worked on somebody's childhood?
Absolutely, because most of us in the animation industry, we grew up with cartoons the same as anybody else, and we were inspired as children to become artists, and so getting to kind of contribute to that same cycle again, and whether it's just making a great experience for somebody's childhood or possibly inspiring a new wave of artists, it's a very cool thing. So it's kind of a tradition that we're a part of, and so I definitely enjoy that.
Nice. So let's kind of go into that aspect. So what made you want to be an artist? Like, was there a certain TV show or something that you grew up with? Did you see a movie and you were like, you know what, I want to do that for a living?
Well, I was one of those kids that I guess I just started drawing ever since I was a little kid, with crayon in my hand and moving up to pencils and stuff. And both of my parents were artists, and they definitely were very, very enthusiastic about supporting whatever your kid likes to do. Just feed that. And so they definitely were very supportive and always wanted to get me as much pencil and paper as they could. My dad made sure he brought home all kinds of spare paper from the print shop at work that they'd be tossing. A lot of my childhood drawings have a misprinted memo that was supposed to be distributed to the office on the back. And they took me to all kind of art shows. And I grew up here in Los Angeles, so there was always a lot of access to animation studios or artists. So whenever there was like an appearance at a store by maybe an artist who wrote a book, or if they were able to get me to meet artists or get a tour of a studio, they were always arranging that. So yeah, I was always drawing as a child.
What are some of your or were some of your biggest influences when you were growing up?
Well, definitely all Marvel and DC comics. I mean, that's always a good gateway thing. But just growing up as I did in the 70s and 80s, there was a great combination of both all the old classics like Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera, and then as we got to the 80s, you have all the newer stuff, Transformers, Voltron, and then when anime really started coming in, that was a big game changer. But definitely one of the biggest things was when the original Star Wars came out when I was 6 years old. I mean, that was mind blowing. It's obviously defined a generation of us, and being an art kid, my parents would often buy me the art of Star Wars books, like when it was birthday or Christmas time, and so I got to just pour over all of these drawings, and I knew from that and all the making of specials that there were people whose job it was to draw and design all these things and then build models and do paintings and things like that. So I was very aware at an early age that there were people who make these things that I watch, and it's their job to do that, and that maybe I could do that someday. It was very much a reality for me.
So were you more drawn towards the no pun intended, drawn towards like creating characters or doing more of that prop design, creating backgrounds and everything like
yeah.
that?
I think when you're a kid, you just kind of draw everything. Probably, when you're really young, you're just trying to draw a drawing of Superman or Darth Vader or something like that. And then as you get a little bit older, then maybe you're wanting to, draw the whole Death Star or the Hall of Justice behind them, And then, when you're a really young kid, you're just like, oh, I want to do everything. You decide you want to draw comic books, so you start drawing your own comic books on paper. Then you think, oh, I want to be a comic strip artist for the newspapers, and you just kind of start just drawing whatever you want. There's no real plan when you're like 8 years old, right?
Yeah.
But what's funny is that eventually that did actually turn into my job, which is pretty funny.
So how did that go? How did you go from drawing on the back of Dad's old memos to basically where you are now?
Oh, well, it's an interesting and unusual path, but for a while I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, as to try to make this a living or anything like that. I was fortunate enough to go to a high school, Santa Monica High School, that had a specific curriculum tailored towards artists. Like there would be a definite path that you would move through these design classes and then illustration classes. But I didn't usually get that much support from a lot of the faculty because a lot of my art was cartoon art. And so many of them thought, oh, well, when you grow out of that, you can do real art. But fortunately, my teacher, he was very supportive of my art and let me do a lot of cartoon illustration for all my projects. But really, I graduated and I had no idea where to go with it because I loved comic strips, but I thought, well, I don't have the idea for the next Calvin and Hobbes or Peanuts. And, I loved cartoons and animation, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a million drawings just to make a ball bounce across a room. And, I just didn't know what to do. So I was just maybe taking some courses at a local community college in just graphic design or illustration. Just kind of, floundering a little bit there post-graduation. And so I knew I needed a job just to have some spending money. So I wound up getting a job at the Hanna-Barbera retail store, which is very much like the Disney stores that are still around today. Mm-hmm. It was all based on the Hanna-Barbera characters. There's half designed like a big Flintstone prehistoric land and half Jetsons future land. And it was run by the animation studio itself. So they would bring us all up to the studio out there in Hollywood to have a tour to make sure everybody knew how animation worked. And unfortunately, I was already in that headspace. Like, oh, I know what all this is, stuff like that. And they would often have special events at the store, like having, Bill Hanna and Joseph Barbera or other directors or artists come on down. And a lot of the employees would come in and we would get to know them because, they would present their employee discount card and our manager would say, you help them out all you can, because they're the reason we have a job. Give them special attention. So I got to know the head of design at the time there at the studio. And one day my manager just said, hey, this guy, he does drawings. And I'm like, dude, shut up, man. I'm just doing little doodles. And he says, dude, you should totally show him your cartoons. I'm like, shut up, dude. And the main artist said, well, yeah, sure, I'd love to see your stuff. And I just had a little folder there that when I was on break, I would be doodling stuff. And he said, hey, these are pretty good. You should come by the studio sometime. Come and see me if you have like more of a portfolio to show me. Eventually, I did do that, and he said, well, keep in touch. Maybe someday we could use you or something. And eventually, those stores got closed up after a big corporate buyout when Turner bought Hanna-Barbera, with an eye towards getting the whole Hanna-Barbera library to create what became Cartoon Network. And I kept in touch. I kept mailing, promo pieces to this artist. And then about a year later, he and a lot of Hanna-Barbera artists had left, and they formed MGM Animation. And they were doing a new Pink Panther cartoon, and he said, hey, would you like to come on in and work? And I said, yes. And that was my first start because it was part of that big wave in the early 90s where there was a big resurgence in animation following the release of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Beauty and the Beast, and The Simpsons. All of a sudden, animation was booming, and there was more projects than there was talent. So they were pretty much giving anybody who could hold a pencil a tryout. Nowadays you really have to know your stuff. So it's inconceivable that I would be able to get in the way I did. What was I a young 19 to 20-year-old? I just got in. I got my shot at a small studio, and I needed nothing. I was so green. I didn't know how to technically do all the drawings. And so I wasn't quite ready to do character design. So what they had me do at first was prop design. So that was at least my start.
So what is the difference between prop design and character design?
Okay,
Obviously,
well,
other than the words
mm-hmm.
in front of design.
Sure. Most obviously the character design, you are designing the characters in the show. But for prop design, that's anything that's moving that isn't like part of the background. So you'll have cars or any other kind of vehicles. If the character picks up a sandwich, the anvil that drops on Wile E. Coyote's head, things like that. So the average show will have plenty of props to design. And at least for me, that was an easier way to ease into animation design than to draw characters. So what's nice is that primarily I'm a character designer, but every now and again I could also dip back into prop design as well. And sometimes I'm cursing that. Sometimes when they say, "Hey, we have a giant robot that needs to be designed, but it's going to be a transformer. It's first going to be a car, and then it's going to transform the robot. And because it's the character's car, we need them to tie in. Can you do all that?" I'm like, oh God, why did I let them know I know how to do props? But I can't complain. Sometimes it keeps you working if you could have more than one talent like that.
So here's a question. So you have to do say you're working on something and they want you to design a character. How much input do the creators? I mean, creators, producers, like how much influence do they have over what you do, or is it one of those where they're like, "Here, create something, and then we'll tweak it from what we like, how we envision it"?
Yeah, it could be a little, it could be a lot, depending on the project and on the creator. I mean, sometimes you'll all just sit down with the script and you'll just talk about what the character is. They might say, "Hey, you know what I'm thinking? I totally want to do a Jack Kirby influence design, or do you remember that old show where there was this guy on it?" And you go, "Yeah," or they'll tell you who the voice actor is going to be. That might be important because you don't want to draw a little skinny guy and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we got this big heavy set actor," and you could tell by his voice that he's a big guy or something. But a lot of times you just maybe do a little sketch, and maybe they'll say, "Oh, I like sketch number 3. Go with that one." Or maybe the director, they might have a really rough sketch, and then this is my concept. You go and you make it awesome. Put your little spin on it. And then usually you'll turn in your artwork to the either the main character designer or art director or the showrunner, whoever it is that you report to. And they'll either give it a thumbs up, or they might be like, "Can you just give them slightly longer hair, or shorten this cape or something like that." So it's a real collaborative process, which is always pretty cool.
Are you allowed to talk about some of the characters that you've designed?
As long as it's something that's aired
out,
already.
Yes.
Yeah. If it's out, free reign. Yeah.
All right. So can you maybe give us like a little rough, like a little sketch, a little rough. Wow, I can't even talk this morning. A little bit of some of the characters that you've created over the years.
There's not too many like big famous ones I've necessarily created, because there's a lot of the shows that I've worked on that if it's something like Dexter's Lab or Powerpuff Girls, most of that is all created by Gendy or Craig, and maybe we're doing like little supporting characters, or they designed it themselves, and maybe we flesh it out and do that, or especially nowadays, cartoons, much like all of Hollywood, it's all about a lot of remakes and reboots. And so Teen Titans Go, we're obviously playing in the big DC Comics sandbox. So, that one's kind of interesting because we were definitely always trying to reference the 2003 Glenn Murakami series, but also we would dig into all of the DC Comics history and maybe reference something. We would reference like the 1980s comics, or we'd also do like stuff from the Super Friends, and especially live action things as well, either from the 80s or currently, things like that. Like I did a whole scene with all of the DC Comics villains, mostly Batman's villains, where I finally was able to design Deathstroke, also known as Slade in our series, for the series. It was a very short scene. Yeah, but then I did everybody else. I was doing Poison Ivy, Bane, Gorilla Grodd, Darkseid, and for a lot of that stuff, I would go in and just look at every different version over the past 50 years that's done for a lot of those characters. So a lot of times there's a bit of research that goes into it, and that's always the fun part.
So, is it easier when you have that bit of research, or is it easier for you to just come up with something off the top of your head?
It can go both ways, because sometimes when you have nothing but a blank sheet of paper, it can be a little daunting until you find that character. But sometimes when you know that you're designing a pre-existing thing, that takes a lot of the indecision off your plate, because you just know that, okay, I'm supposed to be doing a new version of Nightwing. So I know where to start. Yeah, and you sometimes, especially with a character that's got some
Always start
history.
with tassels with Nightwing. When he had those tassels back in the 80s, that was
Oh
the best.
man,
That was the best
the
Nightwing.
high collar. I really
Exactly.
wish I could have done like a full on dorky Nightwing like that. But I did keep the mullet from the from the New Adventures of Batman. So that was a big part that I was able to keep in there. So, but yeah, a lot of that stuff really helps because you know which things to cast off or which things to maybe make fun of. In the case of our Teen Titans Go, since it's a comedy, I knew it's like I've got to have that mullet because that's like the big embarrassing moment that even the designers on that original series are like, yeah, we gave him a mullet.
Oh, well, country music was really popular back then.
Yeah,
Nightwing's
Nightwing's
Billy
yeah.
Ray Cyrus had just come up with his smash hit, so
Yeah.
and like
Nightwing
underpaid
is
it, so
all business in front, action party in the back.
exactly. So how exactly did you make so you were at MGM? So how
hmm
did you go from MGM to something like working on like Avro Monsters or going to like Cartoon Network? Where did that transition happen?
Well, I mean, it's always pretty simple. I mean, and that one was because I was brand new in the business. I did not go to art school, so I didn't have that big network of contacts yet. So when Pink Panther ended, I was just asking my producers if they knew anybody I could call, and one of them said, "Well, here's a number for Klasky Chupo." And I knew that studio because they had done the original couple seasons of The Simpsons. They had done really cool things like the Beastie Boys Shadrach video, and I knew that they had a really interesting visual style, which I had a lot more interest in that personally. So I wound up going over there, and they said, "Well, we have a spot open doing background design on a new show called Duckman." And that was like, I'd only had one job. I said, I'll try background design. And it turned out that wasn't really my thing. I'm not very good at it. But so at least I learned that. But in the meantime, I was able to get in on character design on Aaah, Real Monsters, which was at the time the new show that they brought in to fill the slot of Rugrats because they had done like 3 or 4 seasons of that, and that was done. So I wound up doing characters on Real Monsters and learning how to draw like a Russian because the big thing about that studio, it mainly used Eastern Bloc talent and all these Russian artists who had come over after the end of communism. They were free to come here to Los Angeles and be artists, and it was a great time learning to draw in new styles. And one thing that definitely changed my career was one of the character artists I was working with. He had recently graduated from Cal Arts, and he was like maybe 1 or 2 years behind guys like Gandhi and Craig. So when we had been seeing these new shorts coming out of Hanna-Barbera's What a Cartoon project, obviously some of the big standouts were Dexter's Laboratory and Powerpuff Girls, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know them. I went to school with them." And so when Dexter's Lab went to series, this guy left to go do storyboards on that. And in short order, several of us started like saying, "Hey, what's going on over there? What you got?" So definitely, I made sure I had lunch with them over there, and I got to meet Gendy and Craig, and they said, "Oh yeah, why don't you do a test?" And I did a little test, and instantly like, "Yeah, when can you start?" I was like, "Yes," because that was a show that was very very exciting for me to work on because I already loved it, and that was the start of 7 years working with Gendy and Craig on all their finest, and working with not only all these great Cal Arts graduates, but also a lot of the artists from the original run of Ren and Stimpy as well from Smumco. So I didn't go to art school, but I consider those 7 years that was my art school, learning from all this. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a lot of talent that you were just kind of like pushed into.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I really had to up my game. That was very stressful for a while. It was like being a really good high school athlete, and all of a sudden you're pushed into the pro leagues. But wow, just learned so much from everybody there. Just all the best artists in the business, and kind of like to think it's kind of like by osmosis, because it's not like anybody was giving me lessons or anything, but you just get to just look over everybody's shoulders and maybe grab copies of their artwork. It really upped my game big time. So very lucky to have gotten in on that.
All right, so this is probably going to be a bit of a weird question, but I mean, you've worked on a lot of things. Is there anything that you were really sad that may have been canceled early that you were really looking forward to working more on?
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just looking at your list here, and I was like, man, I loved Symbiotic Titan.
Ah,
Like, I
you know,
loved that show so much.
hmm.
And
Yeah,
Cartoon
I
Network.
only did a little bit of freelance on like maybe one or two episodes of that, but I was between gigs on another show, so I never really got to have the full Symbiotic Titan experience. But yeah, it's like most of the things I worked on there either went for a good long time, like the case of my time working at Cartoon Network on, that was 7 years going back and forth from multiple seasons of Dexter's Powerpuff and Samurai Jack, plus the Powerpuff Girls movie. So, that definitely had all I could have ever dreamed on those shows. And, I had 5 seasons on Teen Titans Go. Yeah, for the most part, I have been lucky enough to just get a good chunk of experience working with any given show. And if anything was a short tenure, it was like, oh, that's fine. I did one season of this show, but then I hopped over onto the next show that I really wanted to work on. So I got to say, I'm lucky enough that everything I've worked on, it's been like for the right amount of time, I'd say.
That's nice. Now, when you were at Nickelodeon, like I'm not 100% sure. Like I barely remember. Like I remember when Nick like moved all of their stuff from uh from Orlando, and like when they shut down all that stuff that was used to be in Universal and everything like that. Did you ever work there, or have you always been in California?
Yeah, always been in California.
Okay.
I'm not super familiar with a lot of that part of the history, but as far as I know, I don't think they ever had animation studios
Okay,
out
was it?
there.
Yeah, it may
Yeah,
have been just like the live action
I think
stuff.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, like Super Sloppy Double Dare and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah, because they still film a lot of those shows out at studios out here in Hollywood. It used to be that all the Nicktoons were done by smaller animation studios. Like there was a couple studios out in New York. I think did Doug and shows like that, and like Spumco would do Ren and Stimpy. Klasky Chubo did Rugrats and Real Monsters and things like that. So it wasn't until somewhere I think in the late '90s. I'm thinking. My timing might be off on that. They opened up Nickelodeon Animation Studios here in Burbank. So
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I was trying to think. I was like, I remember that Nickelodeon had a bunch of stuff in Orlando because like that
mhm,
was one of the big draws to going to
sure.
uh, Universal. There is because they had the Nickelodeon exhibit, and you could
Hmm.
go and do all
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
I
because I
just didn't
think
know.
it's yeah, in Disney Animation, they actually had working animation studios down there in Disney World. They were I can't remember what they were doing out there. I can't remember if they did Lilo and Stitch out there among other things, but they definitely had a working feature animation studio out in Florida at their park.
Well, I mean, yeah, they have like half of that state. It seems with how big
Hmm.
that place is.
Sure.
Okay, so this will be kind of a fun little question. So I'm gonna give you an unlimited budget. So I want you to go, and I want you to you can bring something back that has previously run its course or was canceled early or something that just ended, or I'm gonna give you free reign to create something. Like if you want to do something from scratch, if you want to do, because I mean, like we kind of talked about, like with She-Ra and Thundercats and Powerpuff Girls, they're
Hmm.
bringing all these old things back with just a different animation style.
Hmm.
What is it that you would want to do?
Well, considering that pretty much everything has already been remade or is currently being remade, there's still something that hasn't really been touched upon that I would love to see done. And if I could do it, that would be fun. What would be cool is to just do an old school post episode for Star Wars. Like just not right after they blew up the Death Star, and they had their award ceremony. Luke is in his yellow jacket with the black, and there's no overarching epic saga story. It's just the gang is all together. They hop on the Millennium Falcon and they're going around the galaxy having adventures. Maybe you'll have a little tie-in here or there with something, but no big saga or anything. Just having cool adventures and going to weird planets and messing around in weird alien cantinas and stuff like that. That would be a lot of fun.
So I'm gonna take it. Big Star Wars fan.
Maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
Kinda.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just looking at your Skype icon, and it's the cutest little Jawa I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It looks almost like a Hershey's Kiss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like a little cartoon snack. Yeah. Yeah, that was just, every generation always has one of those big touchstone items, and Star Wars was such a big thing. There's so many of us, especially in animation. That was the big thing that blew our little minds and got us drawing or writing or painting or whatever it is.
Well, now that we're on Star Wars, let's just stay on Star Wars. So, how have you been liking the new or have you been checking out any of the newest animation,
Well,
Clone Wars or
yeah.
I know Gendy did his what was it?
And that was.
Was it the Clone Wars or was he just Clone Wars?
I think it was just Clone Wars. I think,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think the new one had put the in front of it.
The maybe, yeah. I mean, the new old one now at this point. Gosh, yeah. Yeah. I always dip in and out of some of those series. I mean, at first when I saw the first Clone Wars, I'm like, kind of like Andy's. I wish that they had made it a little more different than that. But I mean, that show wound up being pretty incredible, and Rebels was incredible as well. Curious to see the new one. What's that? Resistance. Yeah. And it's definitely a fun time to see all this new product. Some of the new movies have been very cool. Definitely loved The Force Awakens and loved Rogue One. Some of the other ones, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm up there. Yeah. I liked Rogue One just because to me that one it seemed more in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Whenever they get to that dirty, grungy Episode 4 style stuff, it's great. And also, just a cool idea, cool new characters. Took some real creative risks with that one, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like anything else. So it's like not every movie has to be the greatest thing ever. Some movies come out there like that was okay. We'll see what the next one is. Right? No biggie.
Exactly. And to me, I put myself a Star Trek fan over Star Wars, and I sit and I'm like, yeah, we have movies too. They're out there. We've got them. The last one was good. The other ones, they were movies as well.
Well, now you're getting a whole bunch of new TV, so there's still not much more Star Wars TV except for cartoons. But I guess I'm hearing that we'll have some new stuff coming up again.
Yeah, Favreau's doing one, isn't he?
Yeah. So there's so much content now. It's not like it's a make or break deal like when we were all kids. Like there's only one movie that's just going to make it for the next 3 years. Like no, now we have movies and video games and TV series and animated series. If something doesn't hit, no problem. Wait till the next one, I guess.
Did you do any of the the Star Wars books and everything? Because I mean, we had 3 movies for 20 years, and then we only had books in between until Episode 1 came out.
Yeah, no, I don't. No, I never really got into the books and stuff, but I definitely played. Whatever video game would come out, I would always, gobble that up. So I'm like, of course I'm going to play this, man. But played a lot of Shadows of the Empire, especially using all the cheat codes that you can, make just play as a Wampa and attack stormtroopers all day and stuff like that. Or I think one of the games had you could play in an old Ford Falcon, flying through outer space.
Oh, so is there anything current right now that you're really into? we'll do animation wise. We're kind of going off the rails too. So animation wise, non-animation wise, is there anything that you're like super into at the moment? Something that really tickles your fancy?
Yeah, well, I'm still like super behind on the new Voltron series, but I really love that. I mean, that's much like all those really great recent redos of series, be it like GI Joe Resolute or the 2011 Thundercats. That's where you take one of those old properties and you have new animators given a proper budget and really great writing, and it's a super upgrade. Kind of as we would choose to remember it as kids, when the original source material was perhaps not quite up to the quality that we're used to now. But yeah, the new Voltron is amazing, and I'm so far behind. That's the only problem now. There's too much TV, and I'm working all the time, and I can't I can't watch it and work. I need to watch animation. So if I try to do it while working, then I'm not drawing anymore.
Yeah, it always seems like there's never enough time. Like there's so much good stuff up there, and then there's just never enough time to watch any of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's tough. It's tough. And I mean, there's all sorts of other great stuff. Like the new DuckTales. That's another example of a great reboot. Loving it. And yeah, it's like everything that I can think of is stuff that's maybe been on for a while, and I'm just behind. Or there's other things that I'm seeing being done, but they haven't been announced. That's the other tough part about being in the business. You know of what's coming, but I can't say anything about that one.
So here's a question. We had Mike Anderson on, and he does a lot of comics and everything, and he's a big fan of like some of those like early, like late 80s, early 90s cartoons, like Biker Mice from Mars, Street Sharks, like He-Man, stuff like that. So here's a question, just going from someone who, or asking someone who does character design, how come there was that period where everybody was this big, jacked, like impossibly large type of person?
I can't really say that. That's just a little bit before my time, because I got in '93, and I've been lucky enough that most of what I was working on was not like that kind of '80s or post '80s kind of a thing where everything was based on a toy or something like that. Which I guess maybe that's the main reason they were, right? Because coming off the Ninja Turtles success, everybody wanted their own Ninja Turtles, and boys like superheroes, give them big muscles and stuff like that. So luckily, I never really had to work on that kind of stuff. So I can only guess, like, as I just said, that Ruth's just trying to spin it off whatever else was successful, as a lot of those things kind of had a bit of an imitator kind of a vibe to them, But yeah, no idea.
Yeah, it's one of those like it's one of those things I've always wondered, and like that's why I liked Biker Mice from Mars a little bit more than some of those others, just because they weren't these like super jacked bros. Like they were ripped, but they weren't like jacked. So like I always liked them, and they'd be like, these mice riding motorcycles from another planet, they're more realistic.
What was that scene in Stand By Me where the kids are having an argument over whether Mighty Mouse could beat up Superman? And they say, like, stupid question is that? Mighty Mouse is a cartoon. Superman's a real guy.
Oh, man. So, like, what were some of your favorite? I mean, I know you mentioned some of the stuff that you watched growing up, but like, did you have an absolute favorite growing up, like a favorite animated thing that whenever it was on, you were like, I gotta sit in front of the TV and watch this?
Yeah, my ultimate big favorite was always Looney Tunes. The original Warner Brothers cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, all of them. You just can't beat those. I mean, they, even as you watch them as an adult, they are still incredibly funny. Beautifully animated, and in some of the later ones from the 50s, I mean, the backgrounds are amazing. So, yeah, those are the best, and those hold the test of time for sure. And that also informed most of my taste that I like to draw comedy shows. As much as I love comic books, I never really went heavily into doing the action style, realistic stuff. I always liked the comedy. So that's still the tops to me.
Do you have a favorite Looney Tunes character?
Well, it goes back and forth between Bugs Bunny. Of course, he's like the greatest cartoon character ever. But there's Daffy Duck. Can be a lot of fun, especially the greedy asshole Daffy Duck. But I mean, Bugs Bunny, right?
Oh
It's
yeah, I mean it's always
he's
Bugs
the
Bunny. It's
coolest,
like
and we all wish we could be him.
oh my
Like
gosh,
that's
right?
the only way that if you could deal with anybody giving you some business, the way he does, man.
Because like even when he's like a total d bag, you're like, I got you, Bugs Bunny.
Well,
I see.
he never starts it.
Oh no, no,
He's
yeah,
always
but he will
laughing.
finish
That's
it.
the
He
best one.
will finish it
Oh
for
yeah, he
you.
will finish it, but it's always because it's a big bully who really just wants to like bulldoze over his home. And he's always like, "Hey man, you mind not messing with my house here? Just want to eat my carrots in private here." And yeah, they always bring it, so he responds in kind. He's morally justified.
I'm sure that would hold up in a court of law. It's like, Your
Yeah,
Honor, he was trying to, you know.
I do cite Barbary Coast Bunny. I do believe that holds up. I'll say, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Oh man. So you did mention anime as well. So I mean, was anime a big was that a big thing for you, or was it one of those things that you caught like Voltron
Yeah.
and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely one of those big things. I think in the '80s it really started filtering in. Like definitely as a kid, I saw things like Speed Racer and Gatchaman, which was called Battle of the Planets here in
Mm-hmm.
America. But when Robotech came out, that was a big one because I was in junior high, and you're kind of maybe aging out of cartoons, but that one instantly recognized it as something different, and the fact that it was serialized, and then you would see that like characters would like die and that's it, they're
Yeah.
gone, and you're like, what, how did that happen, and then I learned that I knew that they're from Japan, and then I learned that they were like actually three different series joined into one. So what I would do, being out here in Los Angeles, I would go down into Little Tokyo downtown here, and there would be all the Japanese bookstores, and you could find the art of books that nobody made back then for American cartoons, but they would have all the model sheets and the backgrounds and storyboards and everything like that. So what did I always do? I always got all my art books and learned how to draw from that. So that was just a big game changer. There's still a lot of little influences that a lot of that has on my art to this day.
Yeah, like when you mentioned that about like Robotech and everything, where characters would die, I'm trying to think like we didn't really have that in American anime. Because I mean, if we go
Yeah,
back to old GI Joe, like you could
yeah,
see people like get out of things before everything exploded.
yeah. Not at all. I mean, it's only like even just recently in the past 10 years or so, maybe that there's been a change into more serialized storytelling, probably mirroring all the live action stuff now, where you have
Mm-hmm.
continuing storylines. Like I don't know if that was Adventure Time was maybe one of the first to like start having some serialized elements, and it's fairly common, I guess, these days. Even if something isn't tightly serialized, that there are overarching storylines, leading up to say the big bad at the end of the season or something.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Adventure Time because like that was one of the things that I always like when I was watching it. That was one of the things that I was always interested more in
Hmm.
because like it would be 5 or 6 episodes of just fluffy whatever, and then you would get this nugget that is very mature for what this show is, and it's on a completely
Mm-hmm,
different
mm-hmm.
vibe, and then you wouldn't get anything else for like another what seemed forever, and then you would get
Yeah.
another nugget, and like I always love that. I wish that they would take all of those and just make one big show out of those. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure
Well,
I'm sure
well,
someone's gone and made a
yeah.
cut like
Well,
that.
I guess you could always buy those episodes and just watch those in a row, right?
Yeah, I guess you could. I
That'll
guess you
work.
could.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, if I'm getting them off of Amazon, that's what, $3.99 each. I mean,
Yeah. If you love something, support it. I always say, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Eh,
that's often the way that a lot of shows sometimes keep going. I mean, toys can be some of the big thing, but if people are buying merchandise, or like if season one gets released, it's like, well, if not enough people buy it, you're not going to get season two or four or the entire season. So it's like, yeah, sometimes it's good to support those shows that you love.
Yeah, and it's one of those like I know like there are some shows that I will go ahead and I will pre-order the season like Star vs. the Forces of Evil. That's already pre-ordered. I'm ready for it. Once
Hmm.
that new season comes out, it's already purchased. So like I do stuff like that, but it's also one of those where to me it's a little bit harder to just find exactly what I'm looking for.
Mm.
I mean, and that's like, because I'm a big story guy. Like, that's what I love. I love
Uh-huh.
story, and that's one of the things with like Star. Like, they'll do you know random fluff episodes, but then you'll get like two really good story episodes
Hmm.
spaced out in between four fluff episodes. So that's why I kind of like that one so much. But it's really
Hmm.
hard for me to find like really story driven shows other than something like Voltron
Yeah, yeah.
or really outside of anime, because anime is pretty much like if you want a story with animated characters, you're gonna probably watch an anime.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, or yeah, it's got to be the action stuff that's made for an older audience here. Like, I'm sure you've got some decisions to make with all your streaming content, because Young Justice season 3 is going to be exclusive to the DC streaming channel.
Oh, well, I may have gone and already pre-ordered that.
Ah, okay. Well, hey,
Yeah,
then you're all good, and you're supporting the show. So
yeah.
that's that means you'll get maybe another season, right?
That's what I'm hoping. I mean, honestly, my thing was like I knew that Young Justice was coming out, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna love Young Justice. But then I saw the Titans trailer, and I know everybody poo-pooed all over that thing, but I watched and I was like, yeah, I remember in the good old days of comics when Dick was really pissed off at Batman and he hated him, and like he even like my thing is like because I was telling one of my friends on another podcast, Liam from Hilt Radio. I was on his show and we were talking about like DC versus Marvel, and I was like, people don't remember, like, there was a time when Dick hated Batman so much that the whole Nightwing persona, that was Superman. Like, there's a lot of people that, like, either don't know or completely forget about that weird part of comics where Dick Grayson was, like, Superman's ward for a long time. And
Yeah,
then Superman
I
was
remember.
wearing the whole Nightwing thing. And so he just took that from Superman. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
it
remember
doesn't
that
have
being a
anything to do
little
with
part of
Batman.
that. Yeah, I was a Marvel kid growing up, but the one DC comic that I actually read was the New Teen Titans. Because they were still new at the time. So
That
that's
what is
funny
it, the
that I wound up
George
working.
Perez run?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was in it when he quit being Robin and was out of it for a little bit, and he put on that first big giant pop collar thing there.
Mm-hmm.
The original what was the one with Tara and Dexter, the Judas Contract
Judas
storyline.
Contract, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I remember. It's funny. Maybe it was more in the '90s that he really was hating Batman so much, because I remember there was just one scene where it was a crossover one with Batman and the Outsiders, his group that he had in the mid '80s there, and the Titans, and there was just like a subtle thing where the mayor got on the communicator to talk with them about something, and Batman instantly said, "Well, what can we do, Mayor?" And like Robin just says, "Excuse me, Batman." And he steps in front of the camera. He's all, "Mayor, yeah, well, Titans are on this. We got this," because they were calling the Titans, they weren't calling Batman. I was like, "Ooh, nice little subtle thing there." But the whole "fuck Batman" thing. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh,
Maybe that was
well,
in the
you
'90s
know.
when everybody was getting all angsty and
Oh yeah, it's 2000.
Liefeldy.
It's 2018. It's streaming now. We can we can have Batman. Who cares? We can throw
I
one out
guess
there.
I guess like anything else, I always try to keep an open mind and go, okay, I'm not too sure about that, but let's wait until it's done and we watch
Exactly.
one.
And it's like it was a 2 minute thing. Like
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
probably not 100% finished and polished yet.
Hmm.
Because I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't like. I'm still waiting on my email from DC to say you can now have access to DC Universe. And I'm like, there's still a lot of comics that I would like to read in the meantime, please. Because
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
thing that really got me is I mean, I already own Batman the Animated Series, but I'm
Hmm.
gonna get to watch Batman the Animated Series on there along with all of the like their catalog of everything. So I'll be able to watch all of the Justice League stuff, all of the like the animated movies. So that's why to me, I was like, well, that's worth it right there.
Do
Like,
you get to watch Super Friends?
um, you know what? It says the entire DC catalog, and
Oh
DC's not
man.
like Marvel, and sold all their stuff off.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
DC's kind of kept everything. So if we get to watch Super Friends, oh my goodness, that'll be amazing. Now I'm really anxious to now I'm wanting Super Friends to be on there.
See, and then you're gonna have even less time to watch things.
God, I mean, it's one of those, like, I'm trying to, I have uh two podcasts coming up with some other people from different podcasts, and I'm in the process of watching like Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, and then I have to watch all of Outlaw Star, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I've got a week left, and I'm halfway through Fate, so
Oh,
this is
man.
going to be really interesting.
See, I wind up starting things. My wife and I will be watching some series, and then some freelance work comes in. I'm like, oh man, they need this. Like next Wednesday, all my evenings are taken now. Can we get back to Orange is the New Black now? Some of the time. And I know Better Call Saul just started up again. And yeah, it's everything is always on pause for a while.
Yeah, it's really hard because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got to go to LA. I got to go do some voiceover stuff like at the beginning of September. So I'm like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be meeting people. I'm not going to be able to do anything.
Oh
So
man.
it just cuts all of my stuff. But I'm like, if I don't do this, then I'm kind of like pushed back like where I want to be as a person. So
Yeah.
it's like, what comes first, the career or the enjoyment?
See, there you go. When the two start intermingling, it makes it tough.
It
You
does.
know. Yeah.
Oh man! All right, Chris. Thanks for coming on. Where can all of our wonderful audience members find you?
Well, I'm Chris Battle Art on Instagram and Tumblr, and I guess you could still even find all of my old works back on the old Blogspot platform. I haven't touched that in a long time. That was Chris Battle Illustration. But basically, if you just Google my name, Chris Battle, you'll find me. I'm there.
You'll find a bunch of Chris's fighting each other. That's what
Well,
everyone's really
fortunately,
about.
it's like 98% of them is just all me. That's
Just a bunch of Chris's fight. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. So if you want to check on those, just pull the show notes up. Like if you're on iTunes, and you can just click on that link, and that'll take you directly to either his Tumblr. I'll try and find that blogspot, his blogspot, or his Instagram, so that way you can find him there. My name is Josh, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Kane. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Animation Station Podcast, on Twitter at Animate Podcast, Facebook and Tumblr, Animation Station Podcast, our website, animationstationpodcast.com. You can also find all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Play, any of your favorite podcatchers, or anywhere that podcasts are available. Are available, not or available. Anyway, Chris, again,
be available.
Yeah, be available sometimes. Hey, Chris, thanks again for coming on, man. It was really fun.
Yeah, happy to be here, Josh. Thanks.
No problem at all. So for the Animation Station Podcast, I'm Josh.
I'm Chris.
Bye, everybody.
Later.
Mighty's Heroes. That was a good series.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, but I guess now they're all good with their movies. But I mean, yeah, I haven't had time to watch a lot of them. But I liked what I saw of some of the Guardians of the Galaxy cartoon and stuff, and that new Marvel Rising cartoon with like Spider Gwen and Squirrel Girl and Marvel Girl. That looks good. I'm liking that.
I'm really looking forward to the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse that comes out in December.
Oh, right. I've been waiting for somebody to do that.
If they can do that, like if I mean, because it's technically Sony, but I'm like, hey, if somebody can start making like really cool Marvel animated stuff, I'll be a Marvel fan again.
Yeah, and even just me as an artist, I mean, I've always been frustrated with the fact that it's just like, well, everything just has to look like The Incredibles.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, it's like, and there's generational things where most everybody who comes out of art schools or grows up watching certain things, we all happen to have a generational style, and so everybody's kind of pulling from that. But I mean, that's why I like working in television a little more than ever going for features, because especially when I came up in the '90s, it was like it's the Disney 2D, Pocahontas, Little Mermaid style. That's the only style that everybody's doing. Whereas in television, you get all these cool, different graphic styles and things like that. I'm just dying for somebody to do different styles in CG. And it's like, finally, we have something. And it's not like a little kiddie musical with the celebrity voices and with a Smash Mouth song on it. It's action, you know.